Welcome to the Murray End. My name's Mark Machado. I'm joined by my cousin Dominic Machado. I'm in London. He's in Boston. We have been losing sleep and waking up at all the odd hours and going to bed at all the strange hours to watch a draw finally play out at Galle after 12 long years. Dominic, we've got a draw. We'll get into that and everything else. What happened? What went well for Sri Lanka? What went wrong for Sri Lanka? How do they improve for the second test, which starts in only a few days' time? If you haven't come across us before, we're the Murray End. We talk about Sri Lankan cricket every day, all the time, constantly. Hit a like, hit a follow, hit a subscribe. Tell us what you think about the match so far. Leave your comments. We want to hear all that stuff. Dom, what's your kind of top line takeaway? It's the end of Angelo Matthews and Test Whites. It feels like he went out with a little bit of a whimper today.
Yeah, my big takeaway is the difference in intent between the two sides. I think watching Sri Lanka reasonably bat out for a draw, but they just seemed very timid. They weren't going for any of their shots. They weren't going for runs, even when they were sort of batting it out. And that sort of timidness, to me, seemed indicative of the way they played the match. So that's the disappointing thing, is we saw Bangladesh really kind of try to take it to us and put a lot of pressure on us, as much pressure as they possibly could in the time that they had. And we seem to be kind of content with the draw.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I salute Bangladesh, which I don't think in the history of the Murray End I've ever said anything nice about Bangladesh. But I salute the way they went about their business this last few days, because I think actually they turned up quite well prepared. They turned up with a plan and they executed it. But then the decision to declare was, I mean, it wasn't timid, but maybe they should have done it slightly earlier, given themselves slightly longer. Sri Lanka weren't going to chase down that total.
Yeah.
Unless they took risks with the time that they had left. If Bangladesh had given us slightly longer to bat and a slightly smaller total, so if it was, say, 220, 230, then I think that we'd have had longer to bat. So I think we would have thought we could do this, and it would have encouraged us to take risks. You spoke about Sri Lanka being timid in the fourth innings there. I can understand that thinking, because I think once the first two got out, once the opening pair got out, then you're kind of thinking, well, it's not just taking really good batting, but it's also taking very loose bowling as well, because there's probably not enough overs to get
right
over the line here. The only thing you could, obviously there is they could go hell for leather and they could go for kind of 10 plus runs and over and try and get there. But really, in Test cricket at Galle, with the way we've been batting recently, it's more likely that we're going to get ourselves all out here, really. So that's why I kind of can understand how Sri Lanka ended up playing that way.
Yeah, I would say the thing for me is that the approach, even when they were batting, they were looking to defend first. There was no attempt to loosen the pressure by scoring a few runs, ticking it over here and there. And I think that's what got them into trouble a little bit. So then the balls that are perhaps sliding on, or when you're defending, it brings a lot of things in when the pitch is spinning. So for me, that was the big issue, is that I think being slightly proactive, you don't have to be incredibly proactive or more proactive than they were, would have had, it wouldn't have changed the result of the match. But what it would have done, it would have signaled they're not going to ever be on the back foot. Right, because
sorry, go on.
No, that's all I had to say.
So I think once we've kind of discussed the I suppose the last kind of session or so, a session and a half of the match, I think the thing we've really got to get into with this match is Sri Lanka's really struggling to take wickets at Galle now. After that New Zealand series, which finished in October, I kind of was of the opinion I think Sri Lanka could take any test side in Galle. Then we went to South Africa. We got absolutely battered, if we're going to be honest about it. Then the Aussies came over at the beginning of this year for 2 tests in Galle. Sri Lanka really struggled to take wickets against them. And now Bangladesh have turned up. And to be honest, we've made Shanto look like a world beater, and a few of the other Bangladeshi batters look I think look much more accomplished than they actually probably are in Test cricket. I think there's now real question marks over our spin attack. We had 4 spinners on display this week, releasing from 6 hands, which must be some sort of record, I'm sure. I don't know how often 2 ambidextrous spinners have been
I don't
played.
think that's ever happened, has it?
I can't imagine it's ever happened. And since that New Zealand series, the spinners essentially just haven't been doing their job. We've got a comment in already. Hello, says, well, in the NZ series, we won the toss. So I think this is part of it. But I also think, Dom, I'm just getting the impression that some of our Pramath might have just been sussed out or isn't developing or adapting this game the way he needs to.
Yeah, I think we should absolutely mention the pitch because it was a flat pitch. It was easy to score runs, and that makes it hard to take wickets. So it's on one hand, it's a bit unfair to criticize the spinners because both sides scored nearly 500, right? That being said, the Bangladeshi spinners outperformed the Sri Lankan spinners quite clearly, I think. So I ran the numbers, and so we took 7 wickets for 542 runs with spin bowling. So in other words, we averaged 77 with the ball. And as good of a pitch, as good as the pitch might be, that is not acceptable, right? And even though Taijul Islam, right, kind of Bangladesh's lead spinner, struggled in the first innings, he came back really strong in the second innings and put some pressure on the Sri Lankan batters throughout. So for me, in that case, they had Naeem as well in that first innings taking 5 wickets. So to me, it looked really like the Sri Lankan spinners should have done more. I think there's also the issue of we kind of hyped up Prabhas Jayasuriya perhaps too quickly. He had some big matches, he had some big totals, but now teams
he was breaking records though. Like yes. I think the hype was fair. Also, from a kind of personal perspective, I kind of exist just to celebrate Sri Lankan cricket, right? So we need to celebrate our wins as well, right?
That's true, absolutely. And I think there kind of has to be a middle ground where you prepare a pitch that isn't either just flat or a dust bowl, right? Where there's something for the bowlers and something for the batters. So finding that middle ground at Galle, I think, will be useful. And then maybe we can properly assess where our spin attack lies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, with the pitch, I think it's important to note that this was the first draw in 12 years, right? So more often than not, those groundsmen are getting it right in Galle. Yeah. They are doing something right, and some teams are able to get the wickets that they need to win matches. I'd have to go back through the list of all the tests played at Galle to see how often 40 wickets have happened. Ruan just commented, we have one test to find our red ball spin attack and no test in 12 months. Lack of tests make it difficult to groom red ball specialists. I definitely think this is an issue, Dom. The lack of test cricket. I also will caveat that with, though, Sri Lanka know that there's no test cricket, right? They know that that's the case. We've got to find other, there's other teams in the world who have got as little or as much test cricket as we do as well. We've got to find a way around that. I also think that the issue with getting 20 wickets at Galle is an issue that we've now had 3 matches to kind of figure out. I still think it speaks to a larger issue, which is what is the planning that is going on? Are we into the field with plans to get specific batsmen out? When Shanto's going all guns blazing, are we? When we go for drinks, are we coming out with a new game plan? Is the field setting right for him? What are we trying to do? Yeah, force him to make a mistake, waiting for him to display a good ball. Like, what is the? I don't feel I see enough of that. I do think that there is an element where a lot of that sometimes, for example, you can see England talk endlessly about how they've got game plans for every single Indian batter, and clearly it feels like
They don't.
they've been following that test. There's at least 3 Indian batters which they appear not to have game plans for. But sometimes you can overstate it. I'm just not sure I'm seeing enough of this.
Yeah, I think you're right on that point, Mark, that even if the pitch isn't offering you much, just change tactics up. Just play with the batter's minds, right? And say, okay, we're going to go leg side play for a couple overs. All right, now we're going to pack the field and see if we can just put a little pressure. And just those kind of things. You have to use every advantage you have when the pitch is not giving you something, right? And when it's clear that it's not going to give you something. I think that's the other bit is, you've known now for after the first 2 days that the pitch was very flat, that you're going to have to create situations to take wickets. So that planning, even if it can't necessarily occur in the weeks and months ahead of time, there should be conversations between Dhananjaya and the spinners and the coaches, right? To say, okay, here's how we're going to switch it up. Because I think even that act of switching things up makes them think twice, upsets their game plan, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is how Shanto's going about it. Let's just say, okay, we can't stop everything, but we'll make you do something different than what you sort of had mentally prepared for, right? And we took a batter who was severely out of form, and now we've given him 200s in the span of 5 days.
Dennis just wrote, has anyone started to notice how well captains play against us? Pavuma, Smith, now Shanto, and Smith looks so out of form in that World Test Championship.
Yeah.
I think we've got to remember Sri Lanka is the most hospitable place on earth, right? So everyone gets treated to a good time, and when you come to Sri Lanka, right, even captains, failing captains, can find runs. You've shot, as sent in a couple of comments. I'll pick this one out. Just accept it, guys. It's a skill issue. Sri Lanka's played on even flatter pitches than this, but we had Murali. That's right. When we had Murali and then Rangana, we were able to win matches like this quite easily. I just reject the idea it's a skill issue. I think Sri Lanka actually, if anything, overperforms in terms of number of world-class cricketers it produces for a kind of nation of its size and resources. I think it's in the brain center. SLC are always talking about their brain center and how good it is and how they've got how much data they collect and everything like that. It's all well and good collecting all this data. It's all well and good producing X amount of first class players or X amount of international players. But it's that final mix, right? You can give every chef in the world the same ingredients, and every single one of them will come out with a different product. We've got to work sure that we're getting the best out of our ingredients. You've said another comment in. Maybe Sri Lanka need to play at other venues on the island as well. I think this is interesting, Dom, because I thought we were building up a head of steam in Test cricket by playing in the same place, by playing in Galle, and it made the everyone kind of feel that, you know, it was a good place to build game plans around. It's an iconic venue that I think is easier to bring touring teams to, because it's becoming one of those things where when you're out and about and you meet non-Sri Lankan muggles who are into cricket, they always mention Galle and wanted to go watch a match at Galle. I still feel this, that Galle could become a kind of destination type place for touring teams to go to, because it's a place where traveling fans from other teams really want to come and watch cricket. Yeah. And also, I still think we've had a few bad tests there now, but I still think we can make it a fortress, pun intended.
Well, yeah, I think that depends on finding the right balance in the pitch at Galle, right? If for 4 days the pitch is really going to do nothing, then you're going to get results like this, right? Unless there's a batting collapse where both teams score big and then it's just a race towards the finish. So finding a sweet spot where runs are there day 1, day 2, but then things start to change and you kind of have to ply your trade. And to Yusan's earlier comment about Murali, I think that is a fair comment. But at the same time, like say when India came over, there were a lot of draws, a lot of high scoring draws where even Murali couldn't do much. So I think doing that, or maybe even having different Galle pitches where one is maybe a turning pitch and you just don't know what you're going to turn up to. But I think if you make the toss less of a factor, it opens up more options for what you can do. Nick and I were talking about this. Maybe let a little bit of grass grow on the Galle pitch, so that first thing in the morning on those early days, or if there's overhead conditions, it seems a little bit. Add a little bit of variation or spice into what's going on. So I think thinking more carefully, I would personally like to see test matches elsewhere. Sri Lanka has a lot of world famous grounds, the SSC, Asagiria, that would be brilliant to play at, and maybe allow them perhaps to put on display some of their seam bowling skills. Another interesting fact, I think, you rightly said, Mark, that other teams find ways around this, but our seam attack has been, even though we don't play that many tests, has been very good because they've been all over the world playing red ball cricket, right? Kasan Rajatha, Vishwa Fernando, Asita Fernando. They've been at it, plying their trade. If you're at home and the only places you're playing are on these sort of rank turners that are reused pitches, it doesn't really build up the skill set you need to be ready to play on a flat pitch, right? And we saw Australia's spinners adjust really well to that. I will say I was, and I'd like to hear comments on this, I thought Thurindu bowled pretty well. I thought he got some turn, he got some drift off the pitch, and I could see how he can develop into a really useful second spinner, but it's just his first test. He's got one more, and then we got 12 months off. So what is someone like Thurindu going to do to get himself better over these next few months while he's away from Test cricket?
We'll get to all of that, but I just want to put on Dennis's comment. Morning, lads. I'm severely sleep deprived after staying up until 5 a.m. Every day. Watch this absolute stink off an SL performance. Well done on staying up, Dennis. I just want to know, whereabouts in the world are you watching from, Dennis?
He's on the East Coast, right?
Is he on the? Are you on the East Coast? Oh, okay, right. Because what time was I stay? Yeah, geez, watching cricket on the East Coast, absolute nightmare, isn't it? Like, geez, everyone, including yourself, Dom, who's been following Sri Lanka cricket from over there. Anyone following South Asian cricket from that part of the world? Wow.
Well, white ball cricket isn't too bad because it's usually morning time here when it comes on, but tests are really quite hard to deal with.
This interesting stat coming from you, Shant. I saw a stat at the end of the World Test Championship cycle. Fast bowlers had Sri Lanka in number 4 spot in terms of average. I think one of the big stories, and we talk about this almost every episode now, Dom, is the rise and rise of Sri Lankan, or the growth of Sri Lanka's fast bowling depth, and how good some of our fast bowlers have become. We're almost at a point now where we have almost quite different bowling attacks in all 3 formats.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder, when you were talking earlier about our bowling attack and what we're doing at Galle, and how Thurindu now was gonna, I assume he plays the next match, but if he's gonna wait another 12 months before his next test, what do we do in between? I just wonder if there's anybody. I don't know this. I'll try and find out, but no one ever talks or tells me anything at SLC. I wonder if there's anybody who's actually thinking, right, what are we doing in 12 months' time? What's our strategy to win tests? Because I just wonder if the so-called brains trust, it's the coaching team, if they are, who is the kind of director of cricket here? Who is the person going, this is how we're going to...
If we see the Brain Center commercials, Mark, I think it's very clear that Benura Fernando is directing the Brain Center from the hot tub that's available at the High Performance Center.
Look, if it works, it works, right? I'm not going to diss it.
I was going to say, Yushant, to your point, not only were they number 4 in terms of average, they were number 2 in terms of strike rate. So that tells me too, because I saw the same list, they bowled fewer overs than any other team. So maybe that's exactly the sign that we're looking for. Use them a bit more freely. Now, this point that KZ Plays makes is an important one, right? And this kind of speaks to missing Lahiru Kumara. Kumara is the kind of guy who unsettles plans, who you're sort of saying, okay, like I feel comfortable. He's not going to make you feel comfortable anymore. The interesting thing, right? So I think we do have that X factor pace bowler that's available. And I think pairing him with Asita is going to be really good going forward. But the lack of someone who really can turn the ball, and I would say we've had two bowlers who might fit well into that mold. I'd say Praveen and Ramesh Mendes can turn the ball quite a ways, but they weren't able to develop accuracy and consistency in their lines and lengths that we want to see them to make that extra turn effective.
I wonder how long PL's got in situ, right? Because
19 years, Mark. I looked it up. He's been at SLC spin bowling coach since 2006.
I mean, anyone who stayed at SLC in any position for that long is doing something right. Like is either doing something right or knows something about people.
I was going to say, right? Because think about there have to have been hundreds of coaches who have gone through SLC's doors, including legends of the game, the Chaminda Vasas, right? The Losses Malingas, who kind of came in and out. But PL has found his way to be there. And at some point, if every promising spin bowler who comes up the ranks goes into the games, has some good performances, but then tails off, how much of that is about the mentoring and coaching? Because you can't say all these guys are rotten and they don't know how to apply their trade. I think that's absolutely not true. We've got to point at some point to the coaching and say, let's just try something different. And Rangana had the Bangladeshi spinners doing pretty well.
We need, like it's interesting. We need to get somebody on who's worked with him or is in the system. No one ever talks to us. If you're a Sri Lankan cricketer, former, current, ex, future, then get in touch. Drop us a message. We'd love to have you on the show. Loads of other great comments coming in. Ruada said we need a new red ball coach, head coach and spin bowling for our West Indies tour next summer. I look, I'm not saying that we need to get rid of Sanath. I don't think we do, but I think it's too big a job for him to look after all three sides.
Yeah.
It's insane. I also think probably in the kind of medium term, we're pretty close to actually at some points having to run two teams at the same time. I say run, I mean, we're practically doing that now. If you look at the turnover between Red Bull team to how quickly it is that the Red Bull team becomes the White Ball team, we should be, I think, at this moment, working with the White Ball players to try and figure out strategy and
that should be going on right now, right? That should absolutely be going on right now, but there's no squad name. Sanath obviously can't do both of those things, right? So naming or perhaps having some type of white ball deputy, like, some type of deputy coach, even if you don't want to rid Sanath, right, of the title, having some type of deputy coach who can do it.
Rangana's the solution says hello. Look what he did. He mentored NZ for 1 month. They whitewashed India. I'm just looking for some other comments. Deneth. Positives: Nisanka, Kamindu, Udara, Darindu. Negatives: captaincy. I don't know if I just really like DDS. I think I've got a bias in it. But I think we need to start looking at results. We need to look at even dig into the results and look at the times when players or the play gets away from us, right? How is Sri Lanka winning games? Are they winning games by being good over the course of all 5 days? Or are they winning games by individual performances?
Yeah.
So I think we need to figure out a data point that indicates whether it's what is the cause of us winning and losing games, and how does that change? I'm not one for just cutting and changing things just because we think it doesn't quite work. And also, if you were to get rid of DDS, who comes in? Who's the captain after him? Right?
And yeah, absolutely. I don't think that we need to change captains, but we need to proactively kind of think about how can we help make DDS a better captain. And I think that also starts with the coaching, right? How can we make Sanath a more sort of, a different type of coach? I think there are some positives. I will say I do want to focus on what Dinesh said. There's a tendency to say, oh, wow, we drew with Bangladesh. This is a horrible test, but we did bat pretty well. We scored 500 runs. That was good. Nissanka looked all world. Kamindu looked fantastic. Udara looked the part. If you have a batting lineup that can cash in on flat pitches, that's a huge, huge plus. And so we should take that as a positive and view that with some, take something positive away from this test. It's not all negative as much as we're talking about the frustration of drawing a test with Bangladesh.
I need to wrap this up in a few minutes, Dom. But just one last comment. Ratnaika bowls well, but having him in a seat who can't breach 85 miles per hour isn't going to trouble a batter who is set. I'm not sure I really I can understand why you've said that KZ plays or KZ plays, depending on where you're messaging from. But however, the only thing I'll say about that is I think the pace, once a batter is set, the pace almost doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's what they're doing with the ball, and I do kind of think that it's difficult. I think for seamers more than anyone else, because without the test cricket matches, they're just not going to get the kind of air miles. They're not going to get into
and it's easy to sort of fetishize pace and say like pace is everything. We've seen England do it, but one thing with high pace bowlers is they get injured very frequently. You can have a tearaway, but the tearaway is not going to play every match, so you have to have other plans. And I do think I agree that pace does matter. I think having someone who can bowl at 145 makes a big difference, especially on dead pitches. But another thing to consider is what'll make Asita and Milan both more troublesome is having some seamer swing, right? So, like, again, having some grass on the pitch may be helpful. One comment maybe before we wrap up, Mark?
Yeah, Neelan, thoughts of Walalaga's all-rounder role as he brings good energy with bowling in white ball cricket through crease, tight lines, and he can bat. Pravath has no energy through the crease. I'll be perfectly honest with you, Dom. I think Walalaga's stats are becoming too good for him to not focus almost entirely on T20 cricket. Right, I'm talked on one of the big bag shows we did. We got Dan
Weston,
Dan Weston came on and talked about identified cricketers he could go, really do bits in T20 cricket. And Walalage is pretty fairly high up that list in terms of some of the things franchise teams around the world we're looking at. I'm not saying that Walalage does want to play Test cricket for Sri. I'm absolutely sure he does. I'm absolutely sure he would relish the opportunity to. But I think he would have to almost relearn how to play cricket.
Yeah. Well, actually, I kind of
relearn his game to implement into Test cricket.
I don't even think he might need to change that much, to be honest. I think Test cricket has changed, especially on these flat pitches. I think someone like Duneth could bat in the top 5, potentially top 5 or top 6, and bowl as well, which would be a huge add to whatever they have. And Sonal Danusha next game, maybe, right? I think he's the guy who's in front of Walalage in terms of getting a test cap. I don't think they're going to drop Prabha. I would be surprised if they drop Prabha at this point. I think they're going to back him and say, you got to show us that you're a world-class spinner. And if you do, that's great. Unless they go with a spin-heavy attack and they drop someone like Milan Ratnayaka, because you'd have to basically swap Milan for Sonal Danusha, but then you only have one pace bowler.
There is a spot left open by Angelo. We need to talk about that. We need to talk about once we're a little bit further away from the end of play. We'll all be clearer in thought slightly. We're going to wrap this up. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We have been the Murley End. We'll be back probably on Monday at our kind of regular time, which I think is 9:30 SL time. Yeah. Which is 4 o'clock in the UK and 11 o'clock on the East Coast. I have no idea what it is in the West Coast, and I have no idea what time it is in Melbourne. Probably about 4 in the morning or something. Nilan asked a quick question about DDS's captaincy. We have talked about that, so Nilan, just go back.
Scroll back about 15 minutes. We totally addressed this, and we pretty much agree with you totally, Nilan.
Right, we will end the stream there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Tell all your friends. We're the Murley End. Goodbye.